Welcome to Cyber Frontier, bringing you the latest news, trends, and hottest topics that focus on advances in cybersecurity and cyber industry economics. Our expert yet down-to-earth hosts make cybersecurity straightforward. They ask the tough questions and make this challenging topic something that everyone can understand. Our candid approach lets guests open up on topics we would all like to see addressed. You can find us on the web at newcyberfrontier.com. That's www.newcyberfrontier.com. Now join today's host as he introduces the topic for today's new Cyber Frontier.
Hello, this is Abe Thompson with the new Cyber Frontier, coming to you from an undisclosed location here in Colorado somewhere. I hope you're all doing well out there in these trying times. We have the distinct pleasure today of having Mrs. Victoria Beckman. She is currently at the Latin America desk, the chair of the Latin America desk at Frost Brown Todd Attorneys. Victoria, you've got some cybersecurity interface, of course. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Wonderful. So, Victoria, tell us a little bit about how you arrived at this very unique juxtaposition of the law and this technical field of cybersecurity, and then your focus on Latin America. Talk to us a little bit about how you arrived at this position and ended up in cybersecurity.
Well, it was mostly luck. Nothing was planned really. But my undergrad was in engineering. I have a BS in industrial engineering and a minor in information technology.
Sure.
And my goal was to work as an engineer. I was born and raised in Colombia, and I did my undergrad there. So I started working as an engineer for a subsidiary of General Motors.
Okay.
And they had a program to come to the U.S. to learn about their processes, and the idea was to go back to Colombia and apply them there.
Okay.
And a lot of things happened after that. And I ended up also luck and a bet was involved and everything else. I ended up going to law school at Arizona State. And after I graduated, obviously kind of the natural route was to go into intellectual property. And the firm that I was working at the time wanted me to do patents, which I didn't want to do. So I started doing just kind of regular cases. And at some point, we got a case that involved a hacker. And the case was already kind of at the part where they have already done forensic reports, and the Interpol was involved and the FBI. And they basically said, you're an engineer, you probably understand these reports, here, have this case. And I read the reports and I did not understand anything. I had no idea, but I really liked it. And so I decided it was something that I really enjoyed, that I wanted to learn more about. And I started this process of learning everything I could online with books, attending conferences, and studying privacy and cybersecurity, and having that background definitely helped. It's not something that you need to have to be able to practice law in this space, but it definitely helped to understand some things. And then from there, my firm just kind of knew that that's what I liked, and we got another small case, and it grew from there.
Well, that's such a unique and interesting journey, and it sounds like the story of a lot of us, where we kind of fall into the technology piece, but the reality is it touches all of our lives, and any industry is going to be impacted. And certainly I had some early interface before we even knew what cyber law was or even what cyber meant. When I was working with some agencies back east, and then of course with the FBI. But we'll come back in just a moment after we hear a word from our sponsor.
Cyber Resilience Institute helps build strong cyber communities designed to prevent members from attack. Like building a neighborhood watch, it takes coordination and a sharing community to protect our identities and valuables in the virtual world. Typically, we hear that organizations know they need to do something to protect their cyber assets, but don't know where to begin. Let Cyber Resilience Institute help your community create an action plan. Cyber Resilience Institute will build your community or business marketplace so that it is designed to support a collective cyber defense. Contact them for more information at cyberresilienceinstitute.org.
And we're back with the new Cyber Frontier. My name is Abe Thompson. I'm with Mrs. Victoria Beckman. She's an attorney at Frost Brown, responsible for the Latin America desk. Victoria, you were kind of telling us about just how you kind of had to study up on your own once these reports came across your desk, even though you did have a background in IT. I remember back in the 1990s when I was working with an agency in DC. We would come together, a consortium of the FBI, law enforcement, and government agencies to kind of just struggle with the question of what is cyber law, what is a cyber crime, how are we going to prosecute these types of things, how are we going to prevent them, how are we going to go after, how are we going to preserve evidence. And so it's very fascinating even then, and here we are all this time later, and I know there are a lot of attorneys that are scrambling now to have more cyber knowledge and interface so they can be relevant in the discipline. How have you kept yourself relevant in sort of the technical side as your career has progressed?
Well, I think it's a combination of experience. I definitely have learned the most from the cases that I have had to deal with. They're all very unique. They all involve, I work with a forensic team, and because we have had a relationship throughout the years, they have been instrumental in helping me learn what the reports mean, what they're looking for, what they do as soon as they get into a client system, for example, and try to solve it. And so that's been the number one way that I have learned. But I also, again, I really love it. So yeah. I try to read as much as I can. We also, at my firm, we have a weekly newsletter data that is called Privacy and Data Security newsletter. And we write it, our team of attorneys writes it actually. Good. So throughout the week, I'm always monitoring news and blogs and organizations to look for those stories that we're gonna have in the newsletter. So it's a daily, weekly, making sure that we're staying up to date so that we can report and comment on those.
Well, enforces it. Now, how would someone access that newsletter if they wanted to subscribe to it?
It's in our website, firstbrowntodd.com, and you can opt in. Okay. I also am very active on LinkedIn, so if anyone wants to send me an invitation on LinkedIn, I publish it every Monday. Okay. Good. And then you'll get an email every Monday.
Excellent. Yeah, and I'm quite certain, even in my conversations, that there will be certainly a great draw for that. Do you already have quite a few subscribers to that, or does it just has it been mostly clients and then it kind of builds out, or what have you seen in terms of response to that newsletter?
It has been amazing, actually. The newsletter is fairly new. We started about a year ago. Okay. When I came into Frost Brown Todd about a year and a half ago, one of my tasks was to revamp the privacy team, the data security team, to make it be more of a team. We had all the attorneys with experience at the firm, but it wasn't necessarily working as a practice group. And part of that revamping, we came up with the idea of the newsletter. So we started about March 2019. And originally we sent it to clients, and the response was overwhelming. We in the first month, we got to the thousands of subscribers. And as I said, I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm very active throughout Latin America with the privacy and data security community. And we get requests. I've been in different countries. I've been in Argentina, or I've been in Uruguay, and people saying, "Oh, we read your newsletter.
Sure.
We really like it." So yeah, it's been a great. We really try to put things that are useful or informative, more than just report so and so was the victim of a data breach. We try to inform about new laws and things like that I think are helpful not only for our clients but for everybody in general.
Sure. Now, two facets there really is, and especially for a lot of our listeners, do have quite a global audience, but certainly from my curiosity, very interested in what are some of the key unique problems that you see in Latin America in cybersecurity that might be a little bit different than say in the UK or here in the United States or Australia. What are some of the unique things maybe you see down in that hemisphere?
Well, unlike in the European Union, where it's a block and it's regulated in terms of privacy by the GDPR, for example, in Latin America, that's not the case.
Yeah.
Each country has its own laws. Sure. And there are different stages of the process of enacting the laws and making them strong and actually enforcing them. So countries like Uruguay, for example, have a pretty robust and developed privacy legislature. And in fact, they have an adequacy decision, or they're considered adequate by the European Union in terms of GDPR standards to do international transfers, and so is Argentina. Colombia also has a pretty good set of laws and a pretty active regulator. They're kind of the equivalent of what the Attorney General will do for the states. The Colombian supervising authority is pretty active. Some other countries, like Ecuador, is in the process of actually just drafting the legislature. Some countries like Chile had some legislation, but they're trying to improve it to bring it kind of up to the standards of GDPR. And another issue is different. Number one, because in Latin countries, privacy as such is a constitutional right, where it's not the case in the United States. But also, just like in the United States, sometimes I think it's taken a little bit for people to realize the importance of cybersecurity and the importance of actually establishing budgets and processes and people responsible for cybersecurity programs and information security programs.
Well, and balancing those two, because it's so funny that here, America, United States of America, this aggressively individual, sort of flavor in society in our citizens, and yet it's Europe and it sounds like Latin America too that are often leading the way in individual privacy. And now we're kind of seeing that you have to balance, not give up. I mean, like right now, as you see around the country, we're balancing the right to freedom of movement with the government's supposed authority to tell us what to do and where to stay and all this other stuff. And so it is interesting how other entities across the world have taken the lead, and yet we consider ourselves here the cowboys and the mavericks and the individuals. And so
and if you think about it, for organizations, I have a fairly a group of international clients, and if you think about it, for organizations, it's complicated because they're dealing with European Union laws that are maybe very strict with, if they're in Latin America, with a bunch of different countries, if they're in the United States, with a bunch of different states. So when you are dealing with an organization that has to be in the global environment, you have to consider a lot of things. In terms of compliance.
Sure. That was the big panic is, oh my goodness, in order to do business with anybody in Europe, we now have to, revamp and learn anything. In fact, I spoke with one of your colleagues out of the United Kingdom, an attorney, barrister or solicitor, as they say over there. And it was interesting because she had become, because of her experience in the law, she'd become an instant magnet because the GDPR was just coming into being and everybody's panicking and running to her. And so she had quite a platform at that point. And it's, very similar, I'm sure, for you, having had the experience in the law. I had a lot of interface in the early days when I was in the Navy, because whenever we would conduct cyber operations, of course, we'd have to bring our attorney in to get approval to do these things. But the scary thing up front is that initially, like you were saying, there was no precedent yet on how to approve and do some of these things. So I do love, though, to see this. There's a lot of attorneys in the United States here, too, even in this local area, that could certainly benefit from increasing their knowledge. Let's take a quick break and go hear from our sponsor one more time.
Murray Security Services are your cybersecurity experts with decades of experience providing professional training services for our clients in various industries. We offer professional training and certification in areas of cybersecurity, safety, health, and environmental services at our academy. Our in-person and online training provides a collaborative environment where students can interact directly with instructors through live chats or in private classrooms. Visit murraysecurityservices.com for more information.
And this is Abe Thompson again from the new Cyber Frontier with attorney Victoria Beckman from Frost Brown. We've been discussing how you arrived at this position and how you really have very effectively created a platform of expertise and are quite sought after. So on the one hand, there is this diversity in Latin America in terms of different countries who are stronger or maybe less effective in cybersecurity, and then some that have really brought it home and understand. How much do you get involved, Victoria, in sort of the forensics piece of cybersecurity? Does that come up particularly in your practice, or do you see that more depending on the type of case it is?
Well, a lot, and it does. And I guess one difference that is important to make is that even though there is privacy and there is data security, and they're pretty kind of intertwined, but at the same time they're different. So
Sure.
there are laws related to actual privacy and how you handle the information that you collect from people and notifications and those kinds of things. And then there is the data security requirements and data security in the United States, for example, data breach notifications. So they're kind of two separate things.
Sure.
I deal with forensics a lot, obviously in cases of data breaches or data incidents. And I have different vendors that I work with, depending on whether my client prefers to work with a vendor, if insurance requires them to work with a specific vendor. But in general, it's the same group. And when my client contacts me and says, for example, we have an incident or we have been attacked with ransomware, I normally get them involved right away.
Sure.
And the reason for that is obviously because sometimes they help us in a case of ransomware, for example, they can help us maybe bring backups and try to reconfigure and get their systems back and running without having to deal with the ransomware issues and the keys. But also because as an outside counsel, I bring the forensic team, and there is that client attorney relationship, so that the information with the forensics team can be protected under the attorney client privilege.
Sure.
So I deal a lot with them. I get their reports, I review their reports, make sure that at the end of the day, the reports could always be potentially discoverable if there was to be some litigation. So the interaction with the forensic team is done mostly by me, not necessarily by my client. Now, the technical aspect of it, I leave it to the experts, and they're the ones that do it. They, again, because of experience, they explain to me what's going on, what kind of attack or things like that. But I let them do whatever it is that they need to do.
Well, and just by osmosis, you're going to absorb knowledge over time. The more often that you're around that and be contributing. You mentioned insurance. That was a big surprise for me early on to learn, just how vital sort of this concept of insurance, but cyber insurance was to the whole picture. Now, what has been your interface from legal perspective with the insurance industry and their growing knowledge and understanding of cyber relevance?
Well, same way, I work a lot with insurance companies just because hopefully in the case of a data breach, my client will have insurance coverage. Sure. And at that point, we assist them with even making the decision of whether or not they're covered and whether or not they should make a claim. Sometimes the incident is not worth making the claim. And once I work with the insurance company, again, it's kind of all in the context of legal. You want to be kind of in the middle to manage the claims, to manage what information the insurance needs without disclosing more than what you need to disclose, but allowing them to do their job. And insurance, the insurance companies want us to be involved because if you have the experience, then you're going to handle the case the way that it's required to be handled, so that there is not exposure and potential liability and a lawsuit down the road.
Sure. And do you find in Latin America, I know that there's it's actually a certification. It's a cyber risk analysis certification that insurance agents can get here in the United States. Is that something similar in Latin America?
In Latin America is a whole other issue because it's really not a common thing to have the cyber insurance coverage, and it's not necessarily required. A lot of agreements here in the U.S. require certain amount of coverage and certain riders in their insurance policies. That's not the case in Latin America, and it is prohibitively expensive to get insurance in Latin America and to even get the coverage, anything close to what you get here.
Sure.
So it does, sometimes when I'm dealing with countries in Latin America and we're doing some kind of agreement, if the company has a parent company or a subsidiary in the United States, it's kind of easy to get it that way and get it endorsed for somebody else. But otherwise, it's hard. Sometimes you will try to enter into an agreement and they'd rather not do the business than have to pay what they have to pay for cyber insurance.
Sure.
But also the requirements in terms of data breach notification, a lot of the expenses in the US with regards to data breach notification is all the forensics and all the notification to individuals, providing credit monitoring and again, potential liability for a lawsuit. In Latin America, there are a lot of countries that don't necessarily have the obligation to notify the subjects of a breach. You have to notify the authority, but not the individuals.
Wow.
Or there is really not much enforcement in case of a data breach. It's kind of like, you you had a data breach and not much happens. So companies are not as concerned about getting that insurance.
Probably because they don't know that they need to be. They don't know that they need to be concerned.
Right.
For sure. Yeah. Now, how about sort of on the legal authority side, as you interface with the magistrate and sort of the judges, do you find some growing understanding on that side of the bench?
Abe, you're cutting off.
Oh, sorry about that. Do you find on the magistrate side? Do you find the judges? Do you find their level of understanding growing?
Well, normally we don't get to that point.
Sure, yeah, to trial, right.
Normally I deal, if I have to deal with the Attorney General's offices of each state, where
Sure.
when it comes down to an actual breach and some kind of, it's like everything, like with intellectual property, some of them do know, some of them don't and don't understand it. There's not a lot. I mean, there's been obviously some litigation, and especially after some huge breaches with Marriott, Capital One, things like that, Target. But there is not a huge body of law like in other fields,
Sure.
like in labor and employment or something like that.
Right.
So it's just kind of a little bit of everything.
Which is kind of exciting too, I would imagine, from the perspective of being an attorney, having some undiscovered country still, some frontier within the law to yet discover. That would seem very interesting to me. Now, you were talking about not knowing that they need the insurance, and I know that in the United States, it's well, anywhere, it's not if but when you're breached, right? And so if you're going to be successful at all, you kind of have to have that rider as protection, because one thing we know is that a lot of the small businesses here, one breach and they're done forever. Do you see the same?
Right. It is difficult to let clients know that it is important to have this insurance. Normally, as you mentioned, smaller clients come to you when an incident already happened, and the first question that I ask is, do you have insurance? And they say no. And that's when they get into that. It is very important, and not only that, but it's very important to actually review and have the advice of somebody that knows about insurance in picking your coverage, what exclusions are there, because it's not the same to just have it as part of your general liability policy or have a separate one. Some of them don't cover social engineering or consider something an act of war, and there are all kinds of exceptions.
Oh, sure.
So you want to make sure that obviously you review that before you buy the insurance, because you don't want to get to a point where you think, yeah, I have insurance, and it turns out that there is some kind of exclusion, and
Sure.
you're on your own.
What are you seeing now in law schools in general? Are there growing like subspecialties now in cyber law inside the major law schools?
Yeah, I've seen here. I'm in Columbus, Ohio, and I know that in Cleveland they have a specialization, and there are a lot of different programs and even LLMs that relate to not necessarily to cybersecurity alone, but it's more privacy.
Privacy law, sure.
I think from the legal standpoint, it tends to be more privacy attorneys. There are not a lot of them that are dedicated solely to cybersecurity. Sure. So there's definitely been an effort. There's definitely been an effort to make it more diverse. It's a field that has been historically dominated by male dominated, and also there is not many minorities doing it in the United States. Yeah. So
there's a few of us.
I do think there is a push. Yes, right. But I do see that there's been a big push to have women in cybersecurity. I think we're trying at least.
Yeah. I worked at a cybersecurity academy, and one of the things that was kind of fun and exciting to see is I finally had a class where it was flipped. I had 75% ladies and 25% guys in a cybersecurity class. So we finally are, cracking open the industry, because we need everybody. I'm sure you've heard that the jobs that are out there, we need everybody to come and be a part of this industry, for sure.
Well, I'm Colombian, so it's not. There are not many of us that are Hispanic and women in the cybersecurity field. So I want all of them to join.
Yeah, just and because we all bring our unique strengths and differences to the work. It's interesting too, talking about that academy that I worked for. I had a number of attorneys that had come through the programs there, and so that was it was quite a demand signal from these attorneys to get this expertise. What would you say to a fellow attorney out there that wants to be more relevant in cybersecurity? How would you encourage them to build their knowledge base and to build their competency so they can address these issues?
Well, I have several mentees, and I get asked that question every day, pretty much. It sounds like, and I never know if they're satisfied with my answer, because the way I learned it was I really was passionate about the topic, and I read everything that comes my way, and I try to be really up to speed in books and CLEs, things like that. So obviously that's one thing. I also think it's good for them to network. I feel the privacy community is pretty inclusive in that sense. They're people willing to help people like me. I get calls, or, I'm a law student. Will you talk to me about your career? What is it that you do on a daily basis? So having those connections, I think, will be good to not only network and get job opportunities, but also to be kind of up to speed in topics that are going on and issues, and attend a couple of cybersecurity conferences if you can.
Sure. Well, and you hit that key word, because even in the industry itself in cybersecurity, if you do not have passion, you will not have impact. And it's funny that, some of these, I would imagine these are, your mentees, to hear of attorneys that would not want to have to read. That's kind of funny, because I think back to what you probably spent your entire time doing law school was reading. Victoria, this has just been extremely interesting, and I'm so excited for our industry to know that we have these dual professionals like you that are you have your legal background, but you've also amassed this great understanding of the cybersecurity industry, and I'm glad you're out there. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thanks for inviting me. And to what you just said, I just want to make sure that people know you don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to be, know a lot about computers to do something like this.
Sure.
Anyone can do it, as long as you are really interested and have that passion. I do feel that having that, liking this area of the law definitely helps, because then it just doesn't feel like something you have to do. You just it's kind of obnoxious how excited I get when there's a new law or when something happens. The nerd inside is very happy when
there's a nerd in all of us.
New development.
Right. Yes.
So I encourage everybody who wants to join this. I mean, there's plenty of room for all of us. Ask and network and ask other attorneys that are doing this. I'm always happy to talk to anyone who wants to do it.
Excellent. Well, this has been the new Cyber Frontier. I'm Abe Thompson, your host here this fine day. We've had attorney Victoria Beckman from Frost Brown. Keep fighting out there and keep your cybersecurity passion alive. This is Abe Thompson. Good day.
Thank you for listening to New Cyber Frontier. Remember to follow or like our post and circulate each new show to your networks. We keep you informed, bring you the latest news, explore new trends, and find the hottest topics. With New Cyber Frontier, you don't have to be a computer or cybersecurity expert. Just get plugged in. We encourage you to get involved. Tell us what topics interest you and join our mailing lists. You can find us on the web at www.newcyberfrontier.com. That's newcyberfrontier.com. Check out our previous interviews and please let us know if there are any topics that you would like to hear discussed. See you next time on New Cyber Frontier.